The rest of the day at Wonder World had been fun, but predictable. I didn't unknowingly wet my pants on any other rides, but maybe I was paying more attention. Or maybe my parents' timing got better, come to think of it. For the rest of the day we only went on the big scary rides right after my diaper changes. I didn't want it to, but time to come home arrived as usual. "Oh, it's 3," I said. "My mom wants me to go home now." "But it's only 3. Dave said, amazed. "Geez, what is it, chores or something?" "Something like that," I said. I wished I could tell Dave about my diapers and how much fun they were, most of the time. But I knew he'd laugh at me and probably stop being my friend. He'd probably ask if my diaper was wet, and I'd have to tell him it was, which was the truth, and I'd feel even worse. At the door I said, "See you in school tomorrow." "Okay, see you there," said Dave. Monday at school was much the same as Friday at school, except that it was the start of a week instead of the end. As usual, halfway through the morning came the usual bathroom break and recess, and I headed to the office to see Nurse Ames. Unknown to me, Kurt was trying it again. Sneaking down the hall, he spotted Mr. Walden, the vice principal, doing his routine hall patrolling. Luckily Mr. Walden was walking away, so he crept back to the last corner until Mr. Walden had turned another corner, far down the hall. This was his chance. As quickly and quietly as he could he sneaked up to the door of the nurse's office, put his ear near the crack and began to listen. Back inside, I was on the examination table, with my pants down so Nurse Ames could change my diaper. "Goodness, you're wet," she exclaimed when she unfastened the tapes. "Your diaper always seems to be soaked at your morning changing." "Yeah," I said, blushing slightly. "I think it's from all the water, milk and juice I drink at breakfast." "Well, we'll soon have you nice and dry. Lift up, now." I did, and she removed the wet diaper and slid a dry one under me in one fluid motion. "You know, this morning I didn't notice I was wetting my diaper until I was almost finished. That will happen when someone starts using diapers exclusively, though in your case it seems to be happening rather quickly." Nurse Ames finished with the baby wipe and got the baby powder. "If you keep it up, your muscles may get so weak that you'll have to be potty trained all over again. Still, I suppose your parents and your doctor know what they're doing." "Doctor?" I suppose they'd been discussing my diapers with Dr. Underwood, our family doctor, and put something about it in the note they'd sent with me the previous week. "I guess so," I said as Nurse Ames taped the new diaper securely up. "Well, Chris, there you go. See you this afternoon." She put things away and dropped my rolled-up wet diaper into the trash can, one of those silver metal ones with a push pedal that school nurses always seem to have. "Bye, Nurse Ames, and thanks." I turned the doorknob and opened the door, just in time to see a figure in blue jeans, a brown jacket and a backwards red baseball cap run down the hall and around the corner. That looked like Kurt, I thought. Uh-oh. My heart felt like it was trying to leap down into my diaper. Behind me Nurse Ames also watched Kurt run away and raised an eyebrow. The rest of the day I felt very, very nervous and afraid. I wondered how much Kurt had heard, and what he would do. The meaningful glances he gave me during class didn't help. At lunch Mom wondered if I was all right, and at my afternoon diaper change Nurse Ames wondered the same thing. I must have looked worried. Both times I told them that nothing was wrong, but I don't think they believed me. At the end of the day I went home and felt relieved that I didn't have to worry about my family. They already knew everything. More than I thought, in fact. Dinner that night was unremarkable. The fact that I was in diapers never even entered the conversation. When Dad asked me how school went, I felt uncomfortable and only said, "Fine." The rest of the time, though, I felt great. Although that Kurt guy knew about my diapers, which made me uneasy because I didn't know whether he'd tell or what he'd do, at home everybody knew about my diapers, so being at home was a big relief. After supper I went up to my room to find something to do, but then I heard Dad calling me. "Chris," he said, "come downstairs. We need to talk to you." I would probably have been more frustrated if I'd actually found something to do before he called me. I went downstairs, and Mom said, "Why don't you sit down on the couch?" Now I felt nervous. That was when I noticed that Mom had something in her hand. I sat down, but Mom and Dad remained standing. Mom said, "Can you tell us anything about this?" She opened her hand, revealing, my pacifier. Pink transparent rubber, I'd know it anywhere. What were they going to do? Were they angry? Oh, yeah, she'd asked me a question. What should I say? It's my pacifier, I stammered. Why, asked Dad, do you have a pacifier? It makes me feel little. Mom sounded concerned. Do you like to feel little, Chris? She asked. Yes. Why? Dad asked. I hesitated. I don't know why I hesitated. It feels good. They looked at each other, then Dad turned back to me and said, "We'll decide what to do." What to do? Oh, no. And I thought home was safe. They told me I could go back upstairs, so I did, but I didn't feel much like having fun now. What were they going to decide? What were they going to do? Was I in trouble? Were they going to punish me? I sat on my bed. My diaper and the plastic sheet rustled under me. Then I saw Sarah at my door. "I heard," she said. "They found your pacifier." I nodded, looking morosely at the floor. "Yeah. I didn't tell." "Thanks," I said. "Wait a minute. You knew?" "Yeah," she said. "So you want to be, like, a baby again?" "Well," I said, "not really. I mean, if there was a magic wand that could turn me into a baby, I'd probably use it, but only if I could turn back when I wanted. 'Cause babies can't do stuff. They can't play with Legos, because they might try to eat them. And everything they do, their parents have to watch them," Sarah added. "Yeah. But it makes me feel good to feel little." "Yeah," she said. "Well, I don't think they're going to punish you or anything. So don't worry." Easy for her to say. "I'll try," I said. She did this neat wave thing with her fingers and her eyebrows and went back to her room. Sometimes Sarah can be so cool. I didn't get much sleep that night, but I must have dozed off sometime, because I was wet in the morning and I didn't remember it happening. School the next day started out unremarkable, though I was waiting for Kurt to make his move. I knew he knew I was in diapers, and I knew he knew that Nurse Ames was changing me in the mornings and afternoons. I just didn't know what he'd do about it. As usual, I went to Nurse Ames' office during the morning break. The trek down the hall was one nervous step after another, as I constantly expected Kurt to pop out from behind a corner and confront me. I looked left, right and behind me as I walked, but there was no sign of Kurt. I made it to the nurse's office without seeing him. "You don't seem your usual happy self today, Chris," Nurse Ames said as she changed my wet diaper. "Is anything wrong?" "Well, not really." "Was it safe to tell her?" "Go ahead, Chris, you can tell me." "Well, there's this guy, and I think he knows that I wear diapers, and I don't know what he's going to do." "I see." Nurse Ames taped the fresh diaper up. "Are you scared that he might tell your friends?" I pulled my pants back up. "Yeah," I said. "But he might do other things too, but I don't know what." "Are you worried that your friends won't be your friends anymore if they find out?" she asked. She'd hit the nail on the head. "Yeah. And if he tells everybody, then everybody would laugh at me and stuff." "Well, I think that your friends would still be your friends, no matter what they knew. I know all about your diapers, don't I? And I'm your friend." "You are." Somehow I'd never really thought of her as a friend, but this did help. "Certainly, Chris. You'll be fine." I felt a little better, but I still didn't feel like everything would be fine. I thanked her, left, and went outside for recess. As soon as I was outside, there was Kurt. "I know you wear diapers," he said in a loud whisper. "What's it worth to you for me to stay quiet?" I don't know where Kurt learned to talk like that. Maybe he watched too much TV. I don't have anything," I said, feeling very scared. "What do you want?" "That's right," he said. "You wouldn't have any lunch money, because you go home for lunch, and for a diaper change, I bet. But you always get good grades. How about you let me copy off you every time there's a test, and I don't tell anybody your little secret? How's that, sissy Chrissy?" I thought. For one thing, copying was wrong at least, every teacher I'd ever had was firmly against it. For another, Mrs. Evers' policy if she caught anybody copying was to give zeros to both the copier and the copy, and to send them both to the principal's office. Would I rather risk that, or risk Kurt's telling my friends about my diapers? Hurry up, Miss Chris. I think I'll tell your friends first, then I'll start telling everybody else. Okay, I'll let you copy my tests. He probably did anyway. Are you gonna tell? Kurt paused. Not now, he said. I might want something else sometime. The bell rang, too late to save me. We'll talk later, said Kurt. Everybody went back inside for the rest of the morning's classes. Between recess and lunch I couldn't concentrate. 3 is greater than or less than 7. Chris. I had only barely heard Mrs. Evers. I said. What had those numbers been? 3 and 7? I hope so. Less than, I said. That's right, so we put a less than sign between them. What was I going to do? I didn't think there was a test that day, so I didn't have to worry about Kurt copying off me. But still, he could get caught one day, and that meant I could get caught, and we'd both fail the test. Besides, he still knew I wore diapers all the time, and he held all the cards. What was keeping him from telling everybody I wore diapers like a baby? Only the fact that I had something he wanted. And perhaps a perverse pleasure in playing this little game. Suddenly I was angry. How dared he play games with my life? With fractions, it helps to put them into similar terms, Mrs. Evers was saying. But what could I do? How did I get out of this neat little trap he had me in? Then I thought of what Nurse Ames had said earlier that morning. I think that your friends would still be your friends, no matter what they knew, she had said. I know all about your diapers, don't I? And I'm your friend. What if I told them? A scary option, because they might stop being my friends. I bet I knew what Nurse Ames would say to that, probably something like, if they would stop being your friends just because of a little thing like this, are they really your friends? That settled it. I was going to break apart Kurt's stupid plan by telling my friends myself. But I wouldn't tell Kurt about it. No, I wanted to see his face when he tried to tell them and found out they already knew. Now, 3/7 is greater than or less than 1/3. Mrs. Evers was asking. I raised my hand. Chris, do you know? 9 is greater than 7. Greater than, I said confidently. You have the right answer, said Mrs. Evers. I struggled through the rest of the morning and went home for lunch, as usual. I was a little uneasy because of the talk they'd had with me the night before, but Mom behaved as if it hadn't happened. That made me nervous, but I had other things on my mind. For the rest of the day I was anxious for school to end, so I could go over to Dave's house and tell him about my diapers and about Kurt's plan. That guy who knows about my diapers, I said, as Nurse Ames changed me during the afternoon recess, he wants me to let him copy off my tests, or else he'll tell my friends. What a mean thing for him to do, she said, untaping my wet diaper. What are you going to do about it? She lifted my legs up by the ankles, slid the wet diaper out from under me and slid a dry one back underneath. At first I wanted to go along with it, I said. But then I got mad. I'm going to tell my friends all about my diapers, and then he can't do anything. What a daring plan, she exclaimed, cleaning my groin area off with a baby wipe. You have to either fight or give in, and you're fighting. But what if he threatens to tell everybody, not just your friends? I hadn't thought of that. I don't know. Seems to me you have a choice if that happens, she said, sprinkling baby powder. Tell everybody, or head that problem off some other way. What other way? She folded the dry diaper up over me and taped it securely. I doubt you're the only one with a secret, she said. I refastened my pants and thought. How much did she know about the kids at this school? Probably a lot. She could read anyone's medical file if she wanted to, and she'd probably seen all the kids naked at one time or another. Was this a hint? Why not ask? Do you know something, Nurse Ames? I asked. Nothing I can tell you, she said. I suppose that was a sign of her professionalism. If she'd been the type who would tell me about Kurt, she'd probably have told others about me. Have you ever been to his house? I looked confused, and she smiled, and I went out to recess. Kurt left me alone. As happened almost every day, I walked home from school with my best friend Dave. Something was different today, though I was going to tell him a big secret about myself, something which would probably change the way he thought about me, and I wasn't sure if he'd still be my friend after I told him. I got to level 4 the other day, Dave said, talking about one of his video games. I still haven't beaten your Space Avenger record, though. Keep trying, I said. I think I just got lucky. We reached his house, he unlocked the front door, and we went inside and up to his room. As usual, my spring jacket went on a chair and my book bag went on the floor. When would be a good time to say something? My diaper wasn't wet yet, I'd been too nervous to relax. I want to play Tournament Fighters, said Dave. He put the cartridge into the game and turned everything on. Immediately he was controlling a nasty-looking armored character, fighting another. Dave? I asked, looking for a was to start this conversation. Yeah. He knocked his opponent down with a flying kick. I got something to tell you, but I don't know what you'll think. Okay, what is it? He swung his sword, but the other guy blocked his attack. Wear diapers, I spit out. Here it comes, I thought. You what? As I'd thought he'd be, he was surprised. Diapers? You mean like, baby diapers? His opponent was able to get up while he was distracted. Yeah, only they're my size. Maybe if I appeared willing to talk openly, he'd ask more questions and maybe understand. Wow, like all the time, or just at night, or what? He blocked his opponent's attack by raising his sword. All the time, I answered. I had to tell you because Kurt found out, and I didn't want you finding out from him. Oh. Yeah, Kurt might just go around telling people for jollies. But why do you wear diapers? Whoosh, went the other guy's sword as it missed Dave's character. My parents made me, I said, which wasn't completely true. Why, what did you do? Dave swung and scored a hit. Actually, they found some of my diapers in my closet. That wasn't completely true either. Why did you have diapers? Angered, Dave's opponent attacked savagely. I bought them. Okay, why did you buy them? I hesitated. Because I wet the bed, I finally said. Oh. So, how long do you have to wear them? Dave was defending himself valiantly, but he hadn't regained the upper hand yet. There's more. I took a deep breath. I found out I liked them, so I started wearing them at other times, under my clothes. But my parents said that either I have to wear them all the time or give them up. And I don't want to give them up. Wow, Dave said. He paused. Then he asked, and do they make you use them? Yeah, I said. For everything. I have to go see the nurse at school twice a day. Dave finally got in another attacking blow, and although the opponent parried it, Dave was on the offensive again. He was silent for a minute while he continued his attack. Then he said, got him on the run now. Actually, Chris, that sounds really cool. It what? My turn to be surprised. Yeah, Dave said as he scored another hit, I wish my parents would do that. I was amazed. Well, why don't you buy some diapers? Never thought of it, I guess, he said, and he dealt his opponent the final blow. The Emperor gave a thumbs down, and he pressed the B button. Never really thought about video games either, until my parents got me this one for Christmas. Dave's defeated opponent shrank and turned into a diapered infant. I reflected on the way home. Dave had been far more than receptive when I'd told him that I wore diapers and that I liked it. It looked like my best friend was more like me than I'd previously thought. Also, he'd suggested a plan. Okay, what should I do when Kurt tells me? Dave had asked. You could just not be surprised and say you already knew, I had said. Dave had replied, yeah, then thought for a few moments. I have a better idea. Suppose I pretend to be surprised. Then Kurt wouldn't even know I knew. He'd find out sometime, I guess, but it would take a while. Hey, that's a great idea. I had responded. Okay, so that's what you can do. Dave had also suggested that when I told my other friends, such as Jeff, I shouldn't tell them that I liked it, just that my parents were making me wear diapers. I would try to get them to feign surprise and shock, as Dave planned to do. That was assuming that they stayed my friends, but Dave's acceptance made me feel better. If I lost any friends as a result of this, at least my best friend would still be there for me. As I walked, I remembered that Kurt's house was just a few blocks away, if I turned left instead of going straight. Then I thought about what Nurse Ames had said about Kurt earlier that afternoon. Have you ever been to his house? I turned left. Kurt's house came in sight. I saw a girl sitting on the front porch swing, probably one of Kurt's two older sisters, I forgot their names. I stopped walking. I could visit his house, but what would I do once I was there? I couldn't just drop in and say, "Hi, Kurt, how's it going?" He'd probably beat me up. I turned right and headed home, wondering what my parents would do that night. I decided I'd try going there again once I had some idea what to do there. When I got home, Dad changed me as Mom made supper. During supper, I was sitting on pins and needles as well as on my diaper, because of the previous night's conversation. It reminded me of what they'd done when they'd found my diapers. Then, they had confronted me with them and forced me to make a deal, wear diapers all the time, or never wear diapers again. It seemed that they'd talked with our family therapist, Dr. Underwood, before doing that, because they'd been all ready to diaper me. But this time, they'd done nothing after confronting me. They'd said that they would decide what to do, but they hadn't done anything yet. What were they going to do? Had they talked to Dr. Underwood? Nobody was saying anything about it. "So, how was your day, Chris?" Mom asked. If she only knew. I didn't want to tell anyone about the trouble I'd been having with Kurt or the conversation I'd been having with Dave. I think it was because I didn't want anybody spoiling the neat plan Dave and I had, and because Mom and Dad might use the trouble I'd been having as another suggestion that I might want to give up diapers, which I didn't want to do. And maybe because I wanted to be independent, to settle it on my own. The trouble with Kurt didn't make me feel like a baby, and I didn't want to meet it like a baby would, by going to my parents and letting them fix it. That makes sense. Fine, I said. We learned about greater than and less than in math today. That's good. Do you get it? Yeah, it's easy. After supper I expected them to call me downstairs for another talk, but they didn't. I just kind of waited nervously in my room and played half-heartedly. When were they going to call me downstairs? It was almost bedtime, and I couldn't stand it anymore. I went down the stairs, diaper rustling softly under my pants in the evening quiet of our house, and asked them. "What are you going to do?" I asked. They knew what I meant. They looked at each other, then Dad said, "You'll find out soon." Will I like it? Will I hate it? You're not going to tell me anything. Mom smiled in a sad way, as if she were doing something that she didn't like but which was necessary, and said, "It has to be a surprise. Now, it's time for bed, and you'll probably need a change, so back upstairs." I sighed and went back up the stairs. She was right about my needing a change, and she was probably right about it having to be a surprise. Was there another deal coming? Or something different? How soon was soon? I sighed and sat down on my bed. It was the next morning, and I had just had my wet diaper changed by the always helpful Nurse Ames. I headed out to recess. Kurt didn't bother me when I went outside, thank goodness, but he was out there bothering some girls. In a corner of the playground where the teachers couldn't see, he was chasing some girls holding a snake. What was he doing with a snake? Well, chasing girls, obviously, but where did he get it? I stared, trying to make sure it was a real snake. I heard Tina Mac say to a couple of girls who were watching from a distance, "What a jerk." But Sandy and Jenny are such wusses anyway, scared of snakes and stuff. That long, straight brown hair of Kurt's, along with his blue jean vest, gave him a tough, rebel appearance. The vest, which was too big for him, looked like it had once been a jacket, but the arms had come off. Kurt's friend Stu looked on, smiling with glee. Just then, Kurt saw me staring, stopped brandishing the snake, and glared back at me. The girls who were watching pretended they hadn't been, the girls he'd been bothering ran away, and Kurt came toward me. I took some steps backwards, but he started running. He grabbed the front of my jacket and said in no uncertain terms, "What you staring at? You tell the teacher about this, and you know what I'll tell." "No," I said. "I won't tell anybody. I swear." "You better not," he said, and let me go. That afternoon, I'd been worrying about whether there was going to be a test, and suddenly I felt like I had to make a BM. I'd never done that during school before, because everybody would be able to smell it. I tried my best to hold it off, but I knew it was only a matter of time. Maybe I could time it just before recess. I kept holding it, and I succeeded. Just before recess I was walking down the hall toward Nurse Ames' office, and I felt my insides cramp again, so I stopped and just let it come out, like I did at home. I felt the mess fill my seat and hoped it stayed in my diaper. Finally, it was over. I had messed my diaper, and I was at school. I went in to see Nurse Ames, worried about whether she'd be bothered by my messy diaper. "Whew," she said, "did we make a mess this time?" I nodded sheepishly. Once I'd lowered my pants I lay on the edge of the table, as usual. "Well, don't worry, lots of babies make messes." I supposed she meant that she'd changed lots of messy diapers in her day. She carefully removed my diaper and went to flush the mess down the toilet and toss the dirty diaper. As she did this, I remembered that she'd dropped a hint the day before about going to Kurt's house. "Nurse Ames," I said, "about Kurt. I was going to go to his house like you said." "I said no such thing," she interrupted, making me feel uncomfortable. But she hadn't really told me to go there, she'd just suggested it. Well, anyway, I went to his house, and there was somebody on the porch, and I didn't know how I was going to get inside, so I just went home. Nurse Ames busily cleaned me up with a baby wipe. "Who says you have to get inside?" she asked. I suppose I could try to get close and watch, but how do I see inside without somebody seeing me?" She folded the fresh diaper over me and fastened the tapes, saying, "Who says you have to watch? What else would I do? Listen, smell, feel, taste, listen. Do you suppose I could hear anything?" "You never know until you try," she said enigmatically, tossing my wet diaper in the trash can as I put my clothes back in order. I thanked her and headed out to recess. I didn't even see Kurt that time, and there hadn't been a test, so I'd avoided trouble for another day. "I gotta go over there," I whispered urgently to Dave as we walked home from school. "There's gotta be something I can find out." "But what if he sees you?" he whispered back. "He won't see me. I'll hide somewhere." We reached Dave's house. "Okay, good luck," he whispered, and went inside. I walked in the direction of Kurt's house, trying to think where I could hide and still be close enough to hear. Now, the neighbors on one side of the house had a hedge, but it was on the side of the house that was closest to school. If I hid behind that, Kurt would immediately see me as he walked home. That left the other side. I thought there were some bushes over there. It was decided. I took a roundabout way, came at Kurt's house from the other direction, and guiltily sneaked into the neighbor's yard. This neighbor had bushes and trees and plenty of cover. I didn't want to ever have to mow this person's lawn. I was hoping the neighbor wouldn't see me, but I didn't see a car in the driveway or any lights inside. Probably nobody was home. I picked a bush that was close to Kurt's house but not too close to the street, and waited for Kurt to get home. Through an open window I heard what sounded like a TV on inside the house. Listening more, I heard what I thought was an afternoon talk show. If I could hear that, I could probably hear what people were saying, I thought. Over on the sidewalk a few kids walked by, going home from school, but nobody saw me, away from the sidewalk and under a bush. But it seemed Kurt was taking his own sweet time walking home. How long did it take him? Finally I saw him, walking slowly up the concrete front steps. He didn't look the self-confident bully part, as he did at school. He looked as if he didn't want to be here. I couldn't see the front door from where I was, but he must have quietly gone inside. "Kurt, is that you?" I heard a woman's voice say. There was a pause. "Yeah, Mom," said Kurt's voice, sullenly. "Curtis, get in here this instant," the voice said sharply. After a pause I heard Kurt's mom bawl him out about the snake incident at school. Somebody must have told. I hoped Kurt didn't think it was me. When she was done being angry, she said, "You know what this means. Go upstairs and get ready for your punishment." Oh, I thought, looks like Kurt's in trouble. There was silence then, except for the TV talk show. More quietly I heard Kurt's mom say, "Girls, why don't you get dressed up? I think it's a nice day for a walk in the park, and then we can go out for supper." More talk show. I looked around to make sure nobody could see me. It seemed that the open window only let me hear what went on downstairs, because I couldn't hear a word Kurt or his sisters were saying, if anything. During the lull I felt the need to pee and immediately, almost automatically, let go in my diaper. "Leslie, Laura, be sure and help Susie with her hair," said Kurt's mom. It sounded like the three girls were going out to dinner and Kurt was staying behind. Well, he had been pretty nasty to Sandy and Jenny at school, maybe being left all alone at home without supper would teach him a lesson. Once again, silence. Something was going on upstairs that I couldn't hear, presumably the girls were getting dressed up. I had no idea how girls got dressed up, but with Sarah it usually meant spending lots of time in the bathroom followed by lots of time in her room with the door closed. I listened carefully, but heard nothing except the TV. "Susie, you look so pretty," said Kurt's mom's voice. "Why don't you go out on the front porch and enjoy the fresh air while the rest of us get ready?" I heard the front door open, but like I said before I was too far back to see it. Sure enough, Susie slowly walked out onto the porch and sat down on the swing. I could only see the back of her head, perhaps that was just as well, because if I'd been able to see her face she might have been able to see me. She had long, straight brown hair that was very shiny, as if it had just been washed. It was tied with a light blue bow, and the dress she wore was also light blue. Susie idly swung back and forth in the swing, not turning her head at all, and I waited quietly as one TV talk show ended and another began. Then, the TV abruptly shut off, and I heard the front door open again. "Okay, come on, Susie, let's get in the car," said Kurt's mom. I saw Susie and two other girls, both apparently older than her but both with straight brown hair of different lengths, walk down the front steps, followed by the mother, who locked the door behind her. They walked away to the other side of the house, out of my sight, presumably they were going toward the driveway. That was the last I saw of them that day. The question was, what had I learned? That Kurt's mother punished him by going out and leaving him alone in the house without dinner? How was that helpful? The car drove away, and I walked home without answers. When I got home, Mom wasn't making supper. She was relaxing on the couch with Dad. Before I could ask, she said, "We're ordering pizza for supper tonight." "Cool," I said. They looked at each other. "I hate when they do that." Mom then said, "Why don't you go up to your room, and I'll be up to change you in a minute." I said, "Okay," and went upstairs. I suppose I must not have been too attentive in the kitchen and living room. When I walked into my room, my heart thumped excitedly against my ribs. A split second later what I was seeing filtered through to my brain, and I started to see what had widened my eyes. My room looked like a big nursery, right out of my wildest dreams. There was a giant crib where my bed used to be. I stared at it. The mattress was closer to the ground than you'd expect from a baby crib, but the sides were about 5 feet high. The whole thing was white and wooden, with solid panels at head and foot, decorated with juvenile pictures of lambs and bunnies. The sides had really solid-looking bars. I tore my eyes off the crib to see the walls. They'd redone the wallpaper. I now had Winnie the Pooh wallpaper. Balloons and bees and honey pots and Pooh and Piglet. And where was my bookcase? There was a smaller one, stocked with little children's books. I remembered both books and bookcase from when I was smaller. They must have gotten them out of the basement. Mom had come up behind me while I was staring dumbfounded at my new room. "Chris," she said, and I spun around to look at her. "Dr. Underwood said that it was obvious you didn't just want to wear diapers. He said that the best thing for you would be to give you what you wanted. And that means we are going to have to offer you a new deal." I looked at her, listening. She continued, "Basically the deal is, if you accept, the family will treat you like a baby whenever you're at home. But your end of the deal is that you have to act like a baby. What does that mean? I asked. Wow, I had a changing table too. It was kind of low to the ground, not as low as the crib was, and it had shelves below it full of diapers, baby wipes, powder and other supplies. Really, not much different than you're doing now, she answered. We considered not letting you walk or talk, but you're getting a little heavy to carry around, and it's better if you talk in case something's wrong. But it means no feeding yourself, and no putting on or taking off your clothes, and minding us when we tell you not to do things that babies don't do. Oh, I said. Wow, I thought. Will I have to sleep in the crib and get changed on the table? Yes, answered Mom. Dr. Underwood also found us plenty of big baby clothes that will dress you in when you're home, a big playpen that you'll play in, a high chair that you'll sit in when we feed you, and a stroller we can put you in, if you ever want to go out as a baby. Yipes. I don't want to. That's okay, Mom said, that's not part of the deal. We'll only take you out in baby clothes if you decide you want to someday. Outside the house you'll just wear diapers under regular clothes, like you're doing now. I saw Dad and Sarah behind her now. Oh, great, I thought, we're putting on a show for everybody. Mom continued, we'll work out all the details as we go, I guess, but the point is that you'll either be our baby again, whenever you're in this house, or it's no diapers, no baby things, no nothing, as long as you live here with us. What do you think? This reminded me of the first night, the night when they'd offered to put me in diapers. But this was different. Did I want to live as a baby? Yes, I did. But was it safe, letting them know that I wanted to be a baby? Obviously they knew it already, so there was no point in asking myself that question. So what was there keeping me from saying yes? Nothing. Yes, I said, I want to be a baby again. It was the truth. That's our little Chris, said Mom. Here's your pacifier, darling. She put my pink transparent pacifier back into my mouth, the pacifier whose discovery had caused all this. Now, take off your clothes. I still have to change you, and we've got different clothes for you. I took off my clothes, and Mom picked me up and put me on the changing table. Dad left, but Sarah stayed to watch. She smiled at me, though a little sadly, I thought. Mom changed my diaper, dropping the wet one into my diaper pail, which was now out in the open next to the changing table instead of in my closet. Then Mom opened one of my dresser drawers and pulled out a red and white striped t-shirt and a pair of blue denim overalls. These she put on me, over my diaper. I noticed that the overalls had snaps up the legs. She then put my regular socks and shoes back on. I was wondering what new clothes were waiting in that dresser for me and how she'd fit them in there along with my regular clothes. She lifted me back down to the floor. Okay, Chris, she said, let's go downstairs so you can play in your playpen. Pacifier still in my mouth, I went downstairs. My diapers didn't feel as tight around my crotch as they had before, these overalls seemed looser around the diaper area. I figured they were probably designed with diapers in mind. Mom followed me down the stairs. In the living room I saw the playpen Mom had mentioned. Dad must have just set it up, because I hadn't seen it on the way up. Mom pushed some kind of catch, lowered one of the sides of the playpen and said, okay, sweetie, get in so you can play. I stepped inside and Mom raised the side again. I heard it click into place. It was a pretty big playpen. The sides, like the sides of my crib upstairs, were about 5 feet high, which was higher than my head. The bottom was a waterproof pad that rested on the floor, rather than being suspended as with some baby-size playpens. Inside the playpen were some large-size baby toys. There was a big teddy bear and one of those rings-on-a-pole things, and some snap-together beads, and others, but best of all there were some giant Legos. This was great. Where had Dr. Underwood found all these great big baby things? I happily went to work building. Dad was watching the news on TV. The doorbell rang. I imagined it was the pizza delivery person. Oh no! What if they looked in and saw me in the playpen? I thought about getting out, but I quickly realized that it was impossible to get out of the playpen unless somebody let me out. Dad went to the door and thankfully went out onto the front porch to deal with the pizza person. She sounded like a girl, but I didn't know who she was. I had to watch Dad take the pizzas past me and into the kitchen. I smelled wonderful pizza smells, and heard the sounds of plates and glasses being put on the table and chairs being moved. Then Sarah emerged from the kitchen and came over to me. She lowered the side she must have practiced and said, "Come on baby, supper's ready." I ran to the kitchen, disposable diaper crinkling with all the room it now had. In my hunger I expected to sit down at the table, grab a slice of pizza and take a big bite, but then I saw the high chair next to the table and remembered. "Into your high chair now, Chrissy Poo," Sarah said. Before I could say Chrissy Poo, she had grabbed me around my middle and lifted me into the chair. It had a ledge to put my feet on. Then she snapped the tray on in front of me, again with almost practiced ease. At the same time Mom tied a big bib around my neck. Was I going to be fed baby food while the rest of the family got to eat pizza? "Won't I get any pizza?" I asked. "Of course," Sarah said, "but you're too little to eat it yourself." She was enjoying this too much. I didn't yet understand what or how I was eating, but in a few moments Mom made it clear by cutting a slice of pizza into small, bite-sized pieces with a knife and fork. She then put the plate full of pizza bits, the fork and a baby bottle full of milk on the tray in front of me. Once everybody else decided that they were ready to start eating, Mom started feeding me. She took a couple bites of her own piece, then fed some to me, saying things like "Open wide, here it comes," before putting the fork into my open mouth. This was embarrassing and felt really good, and it was definitely better than no pizza. I started feeling thirsty after a few pieces, and eyed the bottle on the tray. "Baby thirsty?" asked Mom, and I nodded my head. "Okay, time for some milk." She put a hand behind my head and inserted the bottle's nipple into my mouth. I tipped my head back out of surprise and reflex. It took a minute to figure out how to drink, but after that it was just like my pacifier. The milk was cold. After I had drunk about a quarter of the milk, she pulled the bottle from my mouth, and milk went dribbling down my face. She wiped it off with a cloth and went back to feeding me. The rest of the meal went just like that. Mom and I finished eating last, because she had to keep stopping to feed me, give me my bottle and cut up more pizza bits. Once she said, "I realize this isn't exactly how babies eat, but you need solid food, and we're not putting everything in the blender for you." I told her that would be gross anyway. I wet my diaper during supper, too, and that felt particularly babyish and good wetting myself while Mom fed me. After supper it was back in the playpen. It wasn't too bad, there were all these great toys, and I could watch TV, though I couldn't change the channel. Soon Dad announced, "It's bedtime for babies," taking me by surprise. "But I'm 8 years old," I protested. "It wasn't my bedtime yet." "Not around here," he replied. "In this house you're a 2-year-old toddler, and toddlers need to go to bed early. Come on." He let me out of the playpen and took me upstairs by the hand. Once we were in my room, or perhaps I should say my nursery, he lifted me onto the changing table and started removing my clothes. The overalls came off with very little cooperation from me, with their leg snaps. Dad changed my wet diaper, then got something new from the dresser, something made from a fabric that was white with a print of some sort. He put it over my arms and head. "A shirt?" Then he put my feet into these sock-like things and started snapping up the legs, and I suddenly realized that I was being put into a one-piece footed sleeper. It was on almost before I knew it, then I saw Mom in the doorway with another bottle. She sat down in a rocking chair that had somehow made its way into my room, and said to Dad, "Can you put him in my lap?" He did, and she gently rocked, and I drank the warm milk, and I almost fell asleep right then. Being rocked in my mother's arms, sucking on a baby bottle of warm milk, dressed in diapers and this sleeper, it was just like being a baby again. When I'd finished the bottle, she sent me off to the bathroom to brush my teeth and so forth, but that moment is unforgettable. When I was ready for bed, I returned to find that Dad had lowered the side of the crib for me. "Sleep tight, little guy," he said, kissing my forehead. Then he raised the crib's side and locked it into position. He went to the door and turned out the light. I saw Sarah at the doorway looking in, but she went away just after Dad went past her. Under me was a baby print sheet and an obviously waterproof crib mattress. Around me were lots of familiar stuffed animals, probably retrieved from the basement, and a very familiar white blanket, which I pulled over myself. I laid my head on the pillow, grabbed a stuffed rabbit named Hoppy, and relaxed. Before I fell asleep I noticed that I now had a Winnie the Pooh night light. "Okay everybody," said Mrs. Evers, "books under the table and take out a pencil." Oh no! A quiz! My heart raced. Kurt would want to copy. This was the moment of truth. As I got out a pencil I looked at Kurt, who sat behind me and to the right. He was already looking at me. Mrs. Evers had already started passing out the quizzes, going from desk to desk and laying them face down on each one. I had a dilemma on my hands. If I let Kurt copy, Mrs. Evers would certainly notice, and I'd automatically get a 0 on the quiz. She'd call my parents, too. If I didn't let Kurt copy, he'd get in trouble, and he would certainly tell my friends. They were forewarned, but once he told them it was only a matter of time before he found out that they were still my friends, and once he did that he'd tell everybody. So the choice was between getting in trouble immediately both at school and at home, and getting in trouble with Kurt sometime next week. "Okay everybody," said Mrs. Evers, "turn your papers over and begin. And no copying. I'll be watching." I swallowed and started writing. Kurt expected me to put my paper on the right edge of my desk so he could see my answers, but I worked in the middle, covering my work with my hand. I imagined Kurt glaring at me. I could feel his eyes burning into the back of my head. But I didn't turn to look, so I didn't know what he was doing. "Curtis Harris!" Mrs. Evers snapped. "Put your pencil down and bring me your paper this instant." I heard Kurt's pencil snap down onto his desk, then I saw him walk quickly and assuredly to the front of the room, carrying his test. As he walked back he saw me watching and looked me in the eye. He gave me a look full of the flames of secrets revealed and passed me by, returning to his seat. "He's out there telling them right now, I know it," I said as Nurse Ames changed me, during the morning recess. "But you said they already know," she said, taping my new diaper up. "They do. But what if Kurt doesn't believe them when they pretend to be surprised? He might decide to tell everybody." "Well, then," she said, "you have 3 choices. Let him copy, let him tell everybody, or don't let him tell everybody. How do I stop him?" She smiled. "Keep listening," she said vaguely. I went outside for recess, with a certain sense of dread. My friends all came right up to me, Dave, Jeff, Sam, everybody. Not far away I saw Kurt, watching, listening and smiling nastily. It was time to start pretending. "Is it true, Chris?" Dave asked. "Are you wearing diapers?" Jeff asked, "Do you really wear them to school every day? Does Nurse Ames really change your diapers every recess?" Sam asked. I sighed and looked at the ground. I had to make this look good. They already knew, though only Dave knew the whole truth. Dave and I had told them all that my parents were punishing me by making me wear diapers all the time. In fact, we'd told a few people who weren't clustered around me now. Apparently Kurt had forgotten to tell them, or didn't know they were my friends. Or they didn't care enough to ask me about it in person. Yeah," I said, still looking at the ground. "It's true." Sam and most of the others looked at each other and said nothing, then wandered away, talking to each other. They were pretending almost too well. Dave and Jeff stuck around. Dave clapped me on the back and said, "It's some kind of punishment, right?" We started walking. Out of the corner of my eye I saw Kurt walk away. It seemed he thought he'd accomplished his task. Dave winked, and Jeff gave me a thumbs up, and they wandered away. I spent the rest of recess among people I didn't usually hang out with. Did you ever find out something you already knew? I mean, where all the clues were right there in front of your face, and you didn't put them together, only suddenly they got together and hit you like a bucketful of cold water, and you felt so stupid? Dave and I were hiding in that bush by Kurt's house. He'd asked to come along while we were walking home from school. "Maybe if we both watch, and listen," he had said, "we'll find out more." "Maybe," I had said, but we'd have to wait for Kurt to get home. Finally there came Kurt, walking slowly up the sidewalk. There he is. Dave whispered intensely. Okay, here we go. Kurt went inside, the TV shut off, and we heard his mother's voice shouting, "There you are. I got a call today. I am not going to raise a cheater. You will get by on your own work, or not at all. You're getting punished big tonight, young lady." Dave and I looked at each other. Did she just say young lady? I whispered. Dave nodded. I think so. We kept listening. Upstairs this instant. Leslie, Laura, Susie's coming upstairs, it's time to help her get all pretty. Dave looked at me, his mouth was open and his eyes were wide. She calls him Susie, he asked. Nobody in particular. Wait, I saw Susie yesterday, I objected. Susie's one of Kurt's sisters. At least, she looked just like a girl. Hello, if you enjoy my stories please take the time and donate so I can make fully animated cartoons of my stories. Even just $1 can help. Thank you either way. If you can't donate please share.